Well, getting started before the crack of dawn once again. Welcome back to Krown's Crypto Cave. There's plenty to talk about today, actually mostly on traditional markets, but I do want to follow up on Bitcoin as well, as it's still, well, more or less playing out the same goddamn range that we've been looking at for the last, I guess, month and a half now. So plenty to talk about across the markets, which could lead into, of course, Bitcoin's resolution, of which I do believe there are plenty of things suggesting that this is the week of, fun time. So with that in mind, let's put the folks over here on the Krown application, which we found at app.krownchain.net. And what did we see? We do see something very interesting here. We saw open interest go up a little bit more than 100 million over the last day and a half, from 1.9 billion to just under 2.1 billion. This is still operating within the same range that we've been seeing for the last month and a half as well, between about 1.9 billion to 2.1 billion. And we're really starting to look for a break of the price action range that we've been consolidated within, between about 10,000 and 11,000. If you want to get super exact, I would say 10.1 and about still 11,000 to the upside. And I want to see a break of the open interest range as well, especially if we see a break to the upside of the open interest range alongside a break on price action in either which direction. That is going to be a damn good indication that we will see a lot of follow through on top of this one. So it is kind of lining up with the narrative that this base that is being built for Bitcoin at the current moment in time, above that $10,000 level, or just below $11,000 right now, is going to be a big one. And the resolution of this is likely going to lead into the next few months of price action direction. So with that in mind, taking a look at the Bitcoin dominance, what do we see? Popped up about 0.25% from yesterday to today as well. We're still kind of also within that region. To me, I don't really have anything new to add there. It's still in a major reversal area as far as I'm concerned, but that does not necessarily speak towards the US dollar valuation of altcoins, just speaks towards their Satoshi value, of which I do believe over the next few months we're going to see that absolutely shatter in the case of the Bitcoin dominance shooting up and altcoin versus Satoshi is shooting down. Anyways, looking at the fear and greed index, what do we see over here? We see a 47, so popping up about 5 points from 42 to 47 over yesterday. And in the data tab, I imagine we're probably going to see anything of too much interest here as well. Yeah, everything's stock standard. Nothing to talk about on perps versus futures price over here. Nothing to really talk about the global funding rate over here as well, as it's just 0.02%. And realistically, it's time to get into the actual price action charts themselves. So with that in mind, looking at the daily right here for spot price action, let's actually go over to GDAX, and let's actually just I'm just going to delete this whole chart. Let's go for a fresh look today, because why the hell not, man? It's been really lackluster as far as price action goes for the last month and a half now. But I do believe that now is about the time to be paying attention to. So looking at this right here, what do we see? Well, first things first, we do see an obvious formation going on right here. Whether you're looking at this as a bear or a bull, you are essentially looking at what would be considered a symmetrical triangle. Something like this going on right here, as far as I'm concerned right now. Something like that. Anyways, volume signature would match up with that as well, as that does suggest that we are going to actually have a resolution date. I think anytime this week is actually extremely likely, and I very rarely use aggressive words like that. Now, this does not, again, imply direction. And with a symmetrical triangle, they technically do have an equal opportunity. It's like a social justice warrior pattern. They have an equal opportunity to break out to the upside as the downside. And in this case right here, with the way that Bitcoin's acting right now, I do think that we're actually going to get another test to the upside resistance of this symmetrical triangle. The question is, do we actually break it or not? So every time that it tests the upside or the downside, both bear and bull pause for a moment in the universe and hold their breath, as this resolution likely is going to lead into, like I said, the next major move for Bitcoin price action. Looking at historical volatility percentile as well on the daily, we are incredibly crushed right here, putting in 1, 2, 3 days in single digits, which is pretty outlier-ish when you get down to it. There's only been a few times in history where we do see this sort of low prints for this sort of a long time. Last time actually was coming out of July of this year in 2020, so that was out of this space right here before this massive about $2,500 move from $3,500 move from about $9,000 to $12,500, and the times before that were basically not even this area right here, funnily enough, even though this was quite the lull and kind of reminiscent of what we're doing right now as well. But even that, to give a little bit of perspective, was just under a 10 read right there, which I mean is still incredibly fucking low. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that's 10 percentile, right? It's 90% of everything's going to be above that. Before that, we had obviously beginning of 2019 right here out of this base for 3 months of a nice contraction phase right here, and then of course pretty much the end of 2018 was all just extremely low volatility, contracting for about 3 months from October to December before that major resolution. I guess maybe a few months before that. Anyways, looking at this right here, we do have two major things suggesting that we actually do get get resolution sooner rather than later. If we go back down to the 4 hour, which I've been following quite aggressively as of recent times, we do see that this is still following. I guess I don't have my regression in here anymore. We're still kind of following the overall regression of this, whether you look at this as a longer term contraction phase like this, which you could actually chart both. And the funny thing about this is that this likely does speak towards the greater range, as the 4 hour, as 4 hour historical volatility percentile is going to have a great, it's the way that it operates when you're looking at, major phases like this is it's going to include, or it's going to interpret much larger swaths of price action, if you want to call it that. The point that I'm trying to make here is that a 4 hour read actually does have major implications for higher term timeframes, especially on an asset that's kind of young like this. But looking at that right there, it would suggest actually greater resolution as far as the greater range goes, and that's actually speaking towards the $10,000 region all the way up to the upper $11,000 region right here. As we do see it start to get pretty damn hot around that region. Probably does have a resolution probably within this next couple weeks. However, if we do draw it more as a regression, which I could probably just go down to a lower term time frame and get this anyways, but it would be something more like this. And more importantly, that would actually be speaking towards the resolution of this current range that we're in right now, between 10,000 and just under, or I guess just actually over 11,000 right there. And that actually would suggest that we're actually on the precipice of breaking this, or at least testing this. Like I said, anytime this week is fine by this, realistically. So this is really the time to be paying attention. And it's funny because I notice a lot, like one of the cool things that I get to notice about about doing YouTube is I get to notice like all the view counts and everything, and it's very trendy actually in the way that things typically operate throughout these long form consolidations. It usually starts with a major massive move. Obviously that's what we had all the way up to 12,000 right here. And then everyone gets super interested, right? A lot of new people come into the market because they see all the, all the headlines around being like Bitcoin back to 12,000 after, going to 20,000 a couple of years ago, and then down to like 3,000, and then back up. It's fucking crazy. But to like the average person, that gets them interested, that gets them excited, because the gambler mindset, you probably don't need an explanation for that. But my point is that what I get to notice is that all the view counts go incredibly up during this portion right here, and then when we get something like this, where it's even like a month, or especially a month plus, like 1 month to 3 months is like par for the course for Bitcoin of going sideways within a range, everyone gets disinterested. And that's fucking obvious. And that's exactly what the market's trying to do with these long form consolidations, is shake out all of the non-believers, I guess. So once everyone's, not really looking at this asset anymore, that's the time when it is typically most likely to move, funnily enough. And you do notice that it matches up with all the other microdynamics, not just historic volatility percentile, not just volume signature, but also open interest signature, of which that is on the precipice right now of getting towards the top side of the range. And what else? And also formation here as well. I mean, if you are looking at this as a symmetrical triangle, well, this would have an apex coming in where, like somewhere around third week of October, and that would suggest that somewhere around here, which is about later this week, we would likely have a resolution on this. And I would take a less aggressive read on this one as well, mostly because I would really want to see at the very least a daily closure above about 10.9 or maybe even 10.950 in order to call this resolve to the upside. Because this is still, it's still right there, mostly in the middle of the range, a little bit of a twist to the upside of the range right now. Anyways, I do want to present a more bullish look today, because I do believe that Bitcoin does have probably a little bit of short-term upside at the very least. So going over here to my secondary charts, I want to bring up something that I haven't really spoken about too much in like the last year to a year and a half. This is something that I used to use quite a fair bit, and something that I still use every once in a while. But I figured I'll bring it back just because, well, it's those boring times in the market, so I'd rather keep a keen eye on something like this. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about the DMI. I'm actually adding a DMI and an ADX right here, and we do see something of interest right now on the 4 hour. The ADX is strengthening above the threshold. I actually have a very low threshold right here, very low threshold. Let's actually want to raise that up to about like a 23 right now, and with that said, I do want to see it'll get a little bit higher there, as we do have quite a few shakeouts, quite a few fakeouts within that region. So I do think it would be better to err on the side of caution, regardless of the fact that we are seeing ADX strengthen while DMI plus is dominant right now. Is that giving us the full kit and caboodle? Is that giving us the full cake right now? No, it's not. But at least it's kind of adding up with our other momentum oscillators, like our MACD, like our Stokes, if we go back on over here too, and like our RS and like our 4 hour RSI, all of which are suggesting suggesting a little bit of short-term up as it is right now. With that in mind, let's actually go back down into our chart right here and just chart out. I'm not going to use this as a symmetrical triangle. Actually, really just I'm not a big pattern trader myself, although symmetrical triangles and just triangles in general do seem to have a decent enough hit rate for Bitcoin, but most of the patterns not so much. Anyways, looking at this right here, we have a very obvious horizontal right there. We have a very obvious horizontal right there. We have a very obvious horizontal right there, although a little bit less relative to where price action is right now. And then of course we got this baby right here. And in fact, yes, there is one at 11.1 as well, but I don't really feel the need to plot that one here because more importantly, anywhere above this baby right here, which is about 11,000 even, I would look at this as resolved to the upside. I think that 11,100 would be a little bit more of a formality. I do think that it would be appropriate to be aggressive within that region for myself. Now, again, I do think that it's important to reiterate that I'm actually not trading Bitcoin right now. I pulled my money out of, well, I still actually hold Bitcoin as I basically always do, so I don't really consider that anything. But what I do during these times of uncertainty is actually just pull my money out from my trading account on Bitcoin. I'm not really interested in trading something like this, mostly because of what happened last week with the litigations being brought against BitMEX, which for me is unnecessary risk. As a trader who uses technical analysis as his main edge, I'd rather not be dealing with any sort of outlier situations like that, for like the next week or two, because what I want to see is if the CFTC starts to go after other major exchanges, because the way that they went after BitMEX is very particular. They went after them for the Bank Secrecy Act, and what that means is that every other exchange, which is also not compliant with that, which is all of them actually, all of the ones that don't have KYC at least, and also don't hold up their end on the BSA as well. So definitely look into that, because I've actually had a lot of experience with that living overseas, and anyone who's lived overseas probably should know about this. Otherwise, you're going to get a very nice letter from the IRS, or I guess that's not the IRS. It'd be the CFTC or FINRA, and then they'll probably tell the IRS, and then you'll get a nice letter from them as well. and so definitely keep an eye out for that. But basically, the way that they're going after them is because they were not having KYC and not reporting their U.S. customers, which obviously they were having. And is BitMEX the only one doing that? Obviously not. No, there's several other exchanges, of which we can all name a few. So I just want to see where that kind of leads towards, and in the meantime, I'll just be trading Forex, as that is, well, honestly, I think Forex is just better in general for actual trading, especially on the lower term timeframes. Bitcoin, great for the high term timeframes, mostly because these moves are just absolutely astronomical. But a month of sideways is it's not really good for the hodler soul, I guess. Anyways, looking at this right here, I'll actually curtail that up just a little bit, just to be a little bit more in line with the upside resistance of this region. I don't really look at anything between where we are right now and the top side as as anything really tradable. Of course, it could be that Bitcoin does just play out even a shorter range between where we are right now and the 200 simple right here at about 10.6. I did say yesterday I was looking for a move back down to 10.5. I believe I'm going to be wrong about that, at least in the short term. Short term, I don't think it's appropriate to be bearish right now. I really don't even think it's appropriate to be bullish either. But if I did have to call one direction here, like the band, like that good old boy band, I don't even know if it's good or not, but it doesn't matter. It's besides the point here. I'd be looking for a move, actually short term back up anywhere around here, between about 10.9 and 11,000-ish region, with particular interest on this $11,000 pivot right here. As long as we're below $11,000, no real resolution in my opinion, especially on a lower term time frame like this 4-hour. If I'm looking at a 12-hour or a daily, could I use 10.9? Probably yes. I do think that it'd actually be fine, but it would be more aggressive. 11,000 still a little bit better. To the downside, of course, a little bit different here. Yes, this is your last prior load about 10,450, but I don't believe that that's the one to be actually aware of. It's still this baby right here, actually at 10,220-ish region. As long as we're above there, I don't really call resolution to the downside. It's all just short-term areas within the guise of these two major regions right here, of which we can plot out a little bit more, but I just don't think that it's all that relevant. And what we should probably do is go over to the medium-term time frame to see how they are operating as well. Looking at the 12-hour, what do we see? We do see, short-term looking like it does want to test the upside, probably somewhere around 10.9 to 11,000-ish region. We do see 12-hour momentum oscillators put in nice and erect to the upside as well. Now, we do have a competing trend line coming in all the way down here, but that still would suggest that we probably do have, at least another couple ticks of some upside tries. Now, long-term, though, you can see that this is actually going on both ends, and this essentially confirms what we see on price action. We're looking at some sort of a symmetrical triangle here, and like I said, does have equal opportunity to break out to the upside as the downside. In this case right here, I still want to see I still want to see price action actually overtake one of these regions before really leaning into it. Looking at what about the daily as well? Yeah, daily stocks actually pointed north once again too, after having quite a few snakes within this region fighting to get back into the bullish control zone, it looks like, and they will stay within they're actually going to confirm within the bullish control zone on the next tick with any sort of a closure basically above 10,600-ish region. So the reverse stock indicator cross once again showing us that momentum is actually significantly underpriced, which does suggest that yes, we will see a little bit more upside here, at least short term, probably back up to like 10.9 region for another test. Does it actually overtake it or not? That is something that if I'm going to give my opinion on it, I need to deliberately differentiate my opinion from technical analysis. Technical analysis is all the things that we spoke about thus far. My opinion would be, it actually is looking like it wants to give a legitimate try up there, but I'd like to check on traditional markets before getting too excited about anything like that. Looking at daily Jewel, what do we see here? It's catching its breath within this region is not necessarily a signal in and of itself, but it is suggesting that momentum is shifting once again to the upside, especially if we do see the pink, which already has a positive slope, get above this what is currently white, which actually has a positive slope as well, and the blue too. That actually would be a good signal that we probably do at least test the upside here. Do we actually break it or not? It's looking at looking at all the other momentum oscillators plus historical volatility percentile plus volume signature plus patterns plus open interest. It would look like this next move that tests either side of the upside resistance or the downside resistance probably does break it. It's very mature formation right here, extremely mature, and things will happen incredibly fast once it actually does break, or at least typically speaking. So let's talk about what happens if it actually does break, of which didn't really talk about the RSI right here, but the RSI, again, long term it's constructive, short term neutral as fuck, slight bullish twist now, but you've seen me flip flop on that every day, like literally every day for the past week. I've flip-flopped between slightly bullish and slightly bearish. What this realistically is indicative of is consolidation. That's what it is. Okay, what was I just about to get on? Yeah, let's talk about what happens if we actually resolve the range. So if we do resolve the range to, should we do the upside first or the downside first? Well, I guess since the upside's a little bit closer, we can do the upside first. And in resolving it to the upside actually would imply a target all the way back up to about 11.8 region overall. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that Bitcoin's just going to absolutely shatter the fucking roof without having any pullbacks along the way. I would still be looking at a pullback at the same area that was relevant in August of this year at about 11.5. And even maybe around our last prior high at 19th of September as well, just below 11.2 for a very short-term move as well. But here's the thing, long-term, yes, these do typically actually get hit. They do have a decent enough hit degree for me to actually be looking for that. And more importantly, it is in line with what we're going to probably see on traditional markets. So I expect to see something similar there as well. And of course, to the downside at 2, which is still very much possible. Like, don't get me wrong, the downside is still very much possible. That would be pointed all the way south towards about the 9,200-ish region, which is in line with our volume profile down here as well. I'm probably not doing this exactly right because our low is like more like right around here at around 10, yeah, about 10 even it looks like. So there you go. It's like actually right in line with the point of control right here, which is basically just this massive consolidation that Bitcoin saw throughout the months of May, June, and July before breaking out to the upside. So if Bitcoin does break to the downside here, low 9,000s is where I'm looking towards for at the very least an extremely strong bounce, maybe even another reversal. But as I've been saying for the last month and a half, as long as Bitcoin's above 10,000, I do technically look at this as a trader as still a potential reversal in progress here. Obviously we've gotten the big bounce. I think, a $1,500 move from about 9,800 to 11.2 right here, or $1,400, whatever the fuck you want to call it, is pretty significant. So, we definitely already got that. But is a reversal or not? A reversal will really not be confirmed until we get above those critical areas that we just spoke about. Again, if you're super conservative, daily above 11,000, that would be pretty damn good. But for right now, it is looking like short-term does want to test a little more upside here as well. I'm curious, what is the 4-hour showing? Or did we already look at the 4-hour reverse stochastic indicator? No, we did not. Yeah, okay, so the reverse stochastic indicator cross is showing that momentum on the 4-hour does remain to the upside as long as we're above 10,720-ish region. Now, again, I just cannot stop looking at this down here. That's going to be deadly. Extremely likely a move happens at any moment. At any moment right now. This is the time to be paying attention. 4-hour RSI looks actually relatively similar to daily as well. Long-term constructive, but short-term slightly bullish here too. I mean, it's really not. We're really splitting hairs, so really splitting hairs. But yeah, it is technically in there right now. So my point is that 4-hour momentum remains the upside as long as above 10,720, and that basically is our higher low structure as it is right now. So as long as Bitcoin is, or sorry, what that basically is suggesting right now is that Bitcoin is in the process of actually putting in this move right here, right now, and it will continue onwards and upwards before we do find that next sort of short-term pivot, if you want, if you will. Now, obviously, you likely already know this even by using more simple tools, but just kind of verifying with something like this is actually incredibly helpful, as it does suggest that pressure is on right here, right now, essentially to the upside. Anyways, going down to the 3-hour and 2-hour and 1-hour, do we see the same thing? Yeah, we basically see the same thing at a higher level here, 10,744 for momentum to remain to the upside. 3-hour Stokes getting into the critical zone. 3-hour historical volatility percentile is starting to expand from a very low read. I believe that we're seeing this. I believe that we're going to see this today. What about the buy hourly right here? What do we see? Basically the same fucking thing once again. Buy hourly Stokes way up there, but that's okay at least for now. 10,750 is the magical number, and I'm curious that the hourly is probably already flipping around a bit. Yeah, 10,790 region, and we are seeing that expansion come out from a very slew of low reads from historical volatility percentile down here as well. So looking at something like this, I think that it is going to be really important as well to be cognizant of a short-term pivot here, because if things do actually bomb, if you do see a bear attack right before Bitcoin, gets within this $10,900 or $11,000 region, or maybe even you do see $10,900 or $11,000 hit and then a major slam down, at what point does this become very problematic for the bears, or sorry, for the Bullahs once again? Because right now the ball is a little bit more in their court. Well, I'd even suggest back down below about 10,650 is where I would start to look at this as a little bit more problematic. Let me see exactly where this fits in. Does this work all the way through? Yeah, it does work all the way through. Okay, yeah, so I'll be sticking with that 10,650-ish region as long as we're closing 4-hour dildos above there. I suppose, short term, yes, I am Bullah-ish, or at least looking for it to likely test back up into this region right here. But if Bitcoin were to break back down below about 10,650, then yes, I'd be looking for it to fill out the bottom side of this range once again. Obviously, short-term targets somewhere back down towards 10,450 to 10,500, which is an incredibly tight range right here. I mean, this is really cutting hair. So again, this is a consolidation. I don't think that this is even really worth trading if it were to come back down below that level. Below here, though, that's where things get interesting once again. Below 10,450-ish region, our last higher low, or what would be our higher low, would imply a test all the way back down another couple $100 where Bitcoin can actually put in another lower low below our 10,220-ish region right here on September 23rd, and that's at the point where this would, I would honestly consider this resolved to the downside, as we would have an official downtrend. We'd have a slew of lower highs. We'd also have a lower low in place. Right now we have lower highs but also higher lows, so it's hard to make a big call off of that. Obviously, if Bitcoin does close a daily dodo below 10,540, that would obviously destroy this as a higher low as it is right now as well, but still, it could come back down here theoretically and put in a higher low. I think unlikely, but I do want to err on the side of caution right here, because I am very hesitant to join a direction until we actually have full on confirmation on a play like this, because this is a very obvious. I mean, anyone who's been trading Bitcoin at least for like a year or two now, you already know this. You already know this. Anytime that Bitcoin has one of these long form consolidations, you see one right here, 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 you see one all the way throughout whole fucking 2015, 2016, those are your big bad moves. So a little bit of patience goes a long way in these areas. And I think that it also is important to reflect upon just the weekly, once again, looking at the 21x moving average. I mean, this is simple as fuck. This is, this is stuff that just drives people mad because, well, I mean, it is quite literally simple, and more importantly, it works, or at least it has been working. Going throughout the annals of history on Bitcoin, anytime that we've seen the yellow 21x moving average have a positive slope with price action above it, those have been amazing buys on the macro, going all the way back to 2012 right here, all the way through 2012 to 2014, wrangles it right here and gets below it with a negative slope. Well, it turns around, and there you go. There's your bear market for the next year. And same thing over here in 2018, throughout the 2016 to 2018 run right here, the whole time, that those conditions were met. And then more recently, what do we see? Has a positive slope, still remains above it, even putting a base above it. I mean, technically speaking, this has been the call the whole way through. Can't really be macro, or I mean, can't really be macro bearish as long as you're above like 7,000, but you know, can't really be long-term bearish as long as you're above the 21 exponential moving average. While there have been things in the past that have suggested that we do test back down around there until we actually break it, is it in the cards or not? Well, I again, trade this as you will, but that's kind of the way that I'd be looking at it. Weekly Stokes have been coming down this whole way throughout this whole time. Now, keep in mind, they actually do have a nice trend line that has been forming here for the last almost a year now, since February 2019, getting the last few major lows, and that could, suggest that we do have a little more downside exposures here as well, or at least momentous drives. But that also, as long as Bitcoin is above the 21, as long as that condition is met, which guess where it is, 10,220. So basically our last higher low. Then that's basically going to be a bullish reset, right? Anyways, looking at weekly RSI, what do we see here? Split in hairs. Again, long-term constructive, good. Short-term, I'm sure someone's going to call this a head and shoulders. I wouldn't necessarily call that head and shoulders. Short term, I'd call it a big old bucket of fucking nothing. Anyways, what else do we want to check out? Maybe do the 2-day and 3-day perusals here as well, as we haven't checked on this for a whole day. And I think that we even have a new maybe 3-day closure. We should have a new 2-day closure tonight. Yes, indeed, we will. Any sort of a 2-day total closure actually above this prior high right here at about 10.8. That would also be pretty damn good. At least for another test back up to about 11.1, which obviously that can have further implications. We do see 2-day Stokes heading upwards and onwards here after having a bit of a snake around the bearish control zone. Typically, that is going to be a good read for further continuation in that direction. And then, of course, we were referencing this as well. So this is the nuance of the jewel right here. The light blue having a positive slope like this, as it does kind of trend into a more bearish read on the pink and white, is going to be read as not a play at all. That's not going to be that's not going to be playable, at least as it is. And I'd imagine that would hold true as long as we're above, especially 10,550, or if you're looking at the 2-day higher low right here at about 10,500. I guess $50 difference. It's not going to really be anything of note. But as long as that condition's met, overall good, I guess. Looking at 2-day RSI, what do we see here? I mean, this is fucking flat as it gets, man. Flat as it gets. What about 3-day? What do we see? 3-day actually did close yesterday and closed above all major moving averages, which is obviously good. And what do we see on 3-day Stokes? We do see it kind of curling down as it is right now. What would be needed to remain it to the upside? As long as we're above 10,350, all good. So fair enough. A little bit of perspective giving right there as well. What do we see on 3-day? I mean, again, you already know it's completely sideways. 3-day jewel could be lining up for a sell signal. Yes. Yeah, it could. So fair enough. It's still baking here. While the short term would favor the upside, I still err on the side of caution. I want to be very, 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 very clear with that. Mostly because I don't think it's really my place to be like giving out directions like that to begin with, because that's more of an opinion interpretation. And realistically, what I want these videos to be is just me giving out the analysis as I see it, and then you taking that and then using that as you will, without like me having my stupid fucking voice giving in your head telling you what you do. That's not the point of this. It's not really what that's for, and it's probably also more destructive than anything really. I mean, it's like having things done for you, and also who's to say that I do them right? I mean, it works for me quite well, but more importantly, it's also just not good for other people. It's something that I've really been thinking about recently, is like directly helping people can actually be hurting them in some ways, because like you kind of take away the growth potential for them. Like if you just do something, like you always hear about the story of like the rich kid who's born to parents who just gave him everything, and bought him a car, bought him like college, just bought him college, I guess, like got him a job, all that good stuff, right? And that person never has to struggle, and then it kind of like rips them of the joy of life, I guess. I also realize right now that it's incredibly dark right here as I look you in the eyes. It's fucking winter already basically in Finland. But yeah, I don't know how I got under that tirade, but apologies for that. Probably annoying. Anyways, my point is that at the end of the day, it's probably better to do things for yourself, because then you can be your own authority. That's a way that I look at the people in the program Discord as well. Like anytime that they ask me a question, I say, hey man, how about your idea on this too? Like I'll help you give you my idea, but we want to be seeing each other as colleagues, not as like someone. I mean, someone just flippantly called me master last night, and I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ, man, please never call me that again in my life. That was very, very awkward. Anyways, let's go over and check out some of the rest of the markets with specific interest on NASDAQ right here, because there is a lot of things going on. And what do we see on the daily for NAS? Daily on NAS is looking for some good upside short term as well, probably back up towards 11,550-ish region. How's that weekly looking too? Yeah, we looked at the weekly yesterday. So here's the obvious play though in NAS. While I do think that short term it probably does test up a little bit here, is it still kind of basically the same thing as Bitcoin, baking some sort of a major massive consolidation? Yes, this one is a little bit more obviously geared towards the upside. But here's the thing: if we take out last week's high at about 11,604 and 3/4, that's going to be your most obvious continuation point for a move back up towards 11.8 or 11.9, I think it was. So let's go back here. Let's see. Somewhere on this block right here, actually, between about 11.9 and about 11, or actually no, I have this one. Oh yeah, this one would be relevant prior, of course. That would be between about 11.8 and about 11.775 and 11.825. So about a $50 range right here. If that area does get taken out to the upside, then I mean, there's going to be relevant areas once again at 12,000 and above, but it's just going to be generally bullish after that point. But yes, if it does take out last week's high, I would look for a quick move, or a relatively quick move back up to, let's just say, 11.8, and that's likely going to put Bitcoin in the maybe mid to low 11,000s, I would guess. Probably mid 11,000s, so like 11.5. So keep an eye on this, because I think that this is just an easier chart to read once again. Let's see, how does it look like on a daily? Yeah, and here's the thing. I mean, this chart's actually significantly easier to read. Here's what I'd say. Here's the fucking God's honest truth on this right now. All right, here's what I'll be doing. Set an alert right here. Set an alert right here. Whichever way it breaks, that's gonna be your direction. Above this area, obviously targeting 11.8 is gonna be the obvious choice. Below this area right here, targeting back down to about 10.8 is gonna. Whoa, that's kind of weird. It's 11.8 and 10.8. That's strange. The market continues to surprise with all sorts of weird goods. But yeah, I'd be looking for a move back down here if that were to happen overall. Now, does that mean that it's gonna have like a straight shot down or a straight shot up? No, there's gonna be small pauses here and along the way. Yes, but generally speaking, I'd be looking for that to happen. E-mini futures for SPY, I think, are a little bit more obviously bullish as well, looking like they want to push back up towards 34.20ish region. So could I be completely wrong about my top calls on all of traditional markets, or at least on NASDAQ? It's gonna be under pressure again, yes, but I wouldn't necessarily call that all said and done until it's back above 11.8 at the very least. But for right now, short-term upside is looking a little more likely. Looking at the weekly right here, looking better as well. And I think that we've already taken out last week's high here. Yeah, we have. Yeah, and I'd be looking for SPY to actually head up to 34.20 or 34.25. Yeah, looking good right there. Momentum also is on the same side as well. Daily Stokes, nice and erect. Daily RSI, very constructive. I really like that read. Yeah, this one's going to be a lot more obviously bullishly biased. But of course, as always, there's got to be some sort of contingent point where it lets me know that this idea is not going to work out, and that'd basically be below the 21 right here, or basically below wherever this one opened at 33.40ish region a couple days ago. So looking at that, I mean, that's really going to govern the direction. So I do believe that it'd be just more worthwhile to mark those areas off on traditional markets and then probably trade it in line with Bitcoin, as they're probably going to move around the same time. But I think that just the more obvious charts are hidden within traditional markets. I'm curious what Tesla's doing, if this one's still popping back up. This one did end the day, I believe, on a little bit of a sideways note. I mean, technically speaking, this is still higher lows, and you could look at this as an ascending triangle. So am I going to be wrong about a major top call on Tesla as well? Well, same thing there as I said on NASDAQ. I really want to see it get back above 465 first, but if that does happen, then yeah, probably not going to be a top here. Probably does work its way much higher, actually. Just kind of eyeballing a measure move here, it'd probably be somewhere in the low 700s. Does that sound right? No, sorry, low 600s. Apologies for that. But still, I want to see proof, not promises, and I'm curious to see what Apple looks like as well. Yeah, put in a bit of a base here as well. Looks like everything's gonna be headed back up. Yeah, Microsoft gonna be doing the same thing too. Short term is up on all of these ones, so very short term I am bullish. And that can lead on to a longer term bullish move as well. So that's basically the gist of what I'm saying right now. Let me see how long this video is already. It's already 34 minutes. What the fuck, man? Let's go check out gold. Gold looks like it's ready for some short-term upside, probably back up towards like a 1930-ish region. What about the weekly here? Yeah, somewhere around the 10 simple looks about right to me. Yeah, that would be actually a little bit higher than that, 1938 to be exact. What about euro dollar? Where's my euro dollar at? Motherfucker, 118 once again. Jesus, you. And this one looks like it wants to head maybe a little bit short-term higher as well, like 118 even, but I would be looking for a short-term pullback from that region as well. Looking at daily Stokes, we do see actually looking pretty good there, and also broke this long-term trend line coming in from the last major high, by the way, as it breaks out of the bearish control zone. I think that that's rather important. Daily RSI is just a bullish reset, so there you go. Again, constructive over the long period of time. I would still be sticking with what I say long-term about this with regards to the 119.5 area, but short-term, yeah, it probably does. Well, I guess, did we just get the move up to 118? Well, I mean, we're pretty fucking close. It's right there, a little bit higher than 118, like 118 and a quarter, we'll call it, is what I'd be looking for. Anyways, and of course below 117 and 7, I would be looking for this one to come all the way back down somewhere to about 117.3. But for right now, short term, looking like it wants to give another try. What about uni? Oh, this baby's going to the fucking moon, huh? Jesus, man, just straight down the stripper pole we go. Where we stop, only bear Jesus knows. Jesus, man, that is a monstrosity as far as the chart goes. God damn, man. So my unicorn is not going to make me rich today, or what? Well, fair enough. What about my XLF? What about my financial sectors? Popping up actually rather aggressively there too. Very interesting. Short term up to $25. I would be looking for a pullback there. XLK probably retest the prior high, 118 and a quarter. What about all of these other major indices? What about Russell? Yeah, Russell's looking good. Oh fuck this. Yeah, this is going up. It's going up, man. Yeah, short term probably pull back around 1600, but this is strong price action right here. This is very strong price action right there, at least for short term. Wow. All right, what about NYA? What do we see here? Short term probably back up to 13,100. What about UKX? Probably down. This one's a pile of fucking steaming garbage. What about triple Qs? Triple Qs looking similar to NAS actually. Short term up, probably back up to about 282.5. What about the very low term timeframes? Nice little gap right there. I would be looking for a short term pullback as well. I think that gets us through all of that. So maybe go check out Mr. Buterol. Maybe Mr. Buterol has some sort of cautionary tales to be given. Usually if Mr. Buterol and Mr. Bitcoin are not following each other, that is a damn bad sign. Right now, I probably would be looking for short term up here to the top side of this blue box territory, somewhere right around about 360-ish region, maybe 361. Does it push through or not? I kind of have the same sound bit to say as Bitcoin. I want to see this one actually break outside of the range first. This range, a daily closure is good enough for me, 360 or above last week's high on the 1st of October at 370 and 62 cents. One of those two things would be good enough for me. And if this one does break out to the upside, I'd probably be, well, short term, I'll be looking for a move to 390.5, and probably medium term, I'll be looking for a move to 410. We are in crunch time right now. So with that in mind, of course, the downside pivot would be right here, right around about 346 region. So I do want to still remain nice and balanced with the way that I talk about the upside and the downside. But right now, yes, the short term upside is favored. Let's actually see what the probability panel has to say about this. By the way, let's see what the relevant levels are going to be. I'm going to make this 11,000 even, just to make it more of a fair contest, and to the downside 10,200-ish region, as those are the two main pivots. And this would also be good enough to declare resolution for myself as well. So let's see what the daily says about this. And it would say that we have a 33 and almost 3/4% chance probability to break above the top side and actually resolve this to the upside. So that's pretty fucking high. The downside in relationship is just under 12%. So that is, well, I mean, it's still actually, that technically speaking, that's actually still okay. But obviously that's grossly overshadowed by about 3x on the above target probability. What's the most likely thing to happen? We trade sideways for another day within the greater range. Short-term range, though, I do think that we're going to test one of these sides. That does not mean that we're actually going to break it, though. Those are two different things. A closure above, again, 33.71, or sorry, 0.79 probability. That is, again, that is decently likely to happen though. I mean, 1 out of 3 times that will be happening essentially. I'm curious what the expected move says as well. Am I on? Okay, yeah, I'm not on multi-time frame. Okay, good. The first standard deviation is actually right around our prior high. Yeah, exactly. And our second standard deviation, or sorry, and our first standard deviation to the downside is right around what would be our last prior low. I would actually be using the second standard deviation, which is getting our what I consider a major low right here. Second standard deviation over here would be 11.5. So that does line up with our upside target, or sorry, not our upside target, but our first major resistance to the upside if Bitcoin were to break above 11,000. And then of course the third standard deviation is actually directly in line with the measure move to the upside and to the downside down here would be around the 200x Benjamin average. So I do like the confluence around those 2 major areas. And I think that's going to be a good place for me to shut off this video. So with that in mind, how do I want to wrap this up? Well, pretty much the same thing as before. Now, of course, Bitcoin is going to be grinding up against this blue box right here, but hold on, let me go back to my GDAX chart. I don't even have that plotted in right here. Short term, I would be looking for Bitcoin to try a little bit higher, maybe around 11.9 region. Does it close above or below 11.9 on a daily though? That's what I'm interested in. That's where do you start to define this as resolved to the upside. I do think it'd be a lot more worthwhile to check in on what's going on in traditional markets with NASDAQ, especially maybe even SPY as well. I think those are just easier charts to read here. But with the way that things are going right now, at least short term, I would be looking for a test of the upside. And if Bitcoin does start to violate or even come back down below, let's call it 10,650, that's at the point where I'd be short-term bearish once again, looking for a move back down here towards about anywhere between 10,350 and about 10,220, and resolution to the downside with any sort of a daily closure below 10,220 or a wick lower than what we saw on the 23rd of September as well, which I didn't talk about at 10,135 and a quarter. One of those 2 things would be good enough to really resolve this one to the downside. Anything other than that is just short-term behavior, of which you might be interested, you might not be interested, with a short-term pivot again once again around 10,650, which would switch on my buy short-term to the downside. With that said, I'd like to wish you the best. I'd like to wish you the happiest. I'll be signing off now. Maybe get some sun in my life. Take care, and until next time.